It's showtime, folks. Enjoy the show.
And a fine Saturday morning. I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna live with it. I'm just gonna live with it. I'm just gonna have to make it my thing. A fine Saturday morning to you, there, Steve.
Good morning. Top of the morning. It's the Irish. It's not even really Irish. It's just bad accent Saturday matinee. That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. I should try Scottish, but I think Steve is smart.
He would
scold me
severely.
Sadly, I'm not sure I would be able to identify a strong Scottish accent or be able to do a good Scottish
you might end up
accent.
sounding Australian, and then you're going to just offend everybody.
It'll be a bad blend of my Scottish, British, and Australian. Yes. Yeah.
That's us Americans. We don't know our geography. We can't tell where our accents are from or if they're even accurate. Oh, my.
Well, and my British often just turns to Cockney, which, sounds the same to me.
We're insulting everybody on both sides. Okay.
That's all right. I live in Hickville. Got a straw in my mouth, and I rode in on my horse past some tumbleweeds to get to the microphone this morning.
Well, you are out on the outer fringes of the Phoenix metropolitan area, so
I am.
All right, sir. So it's us.
It is.
It's no Pete. We're Peteless.
Peteless again. He's off at PodCon learning about podcasting from real podcasting professionals.
Because doing it for 10 years he doesn't know anything about podcasting. He's looking for hot tips. Is that what he's looking for?
Yeah, I don't know what a PodCon. I think it's for anyone. Mm-hmm. You can make podcasts. You can just listen to podcasts. It's just one of those places. They have tons of people recording shows live there. Which is fun because you get a lot of those comedy shows will come and do live shows, which is always a fun treat. They have workshops on podcasting and panels and all sorts of things. Plus, you get to meet people and find new potential guests for shows. So it is a great opportunity.
Good networking event. Find some other podcasters out there that connect with, cross-pollinate shows, grow an audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And just have fun with other human beings.
What? Podcasting an internet thing. That's all about isolation, locking yourself in a room with a microphone. That's the way we do things here.
Staying away from people.
Right. I'll interact with you through a microphone connected to a computer as you're halfway across the country. That's the limit of my social comfort zone.
But that's it. Well, anyway, I hope Pete is having fun. I'm sure he'll have a great time and come back with all sorts of great stuff. So who knows? We may have an entirely new show next week based on the tips he comes back with.
Yes. Oh, well, there's always something exciting and new going on here.
How's your movie life been this past week?
Well, I saw that one thing that we're talking about on Sunday. We need to tell people that.
Yeah.
We need to tell people that.
Yeah, we saw Glass because we're doing the film board.
Right, but it's not tonight. It's not a typical Saturday night. It's going to be Sunday. What is it? 11 a.m.
Noon. 11 a.m. PST.
Right. PST.
Don't I sound more official when I say it that way?
Yes, it's an acronym. It makes it official. Yes. So all our Patreon supporters know that check-in will be live tomorrow at noon Arizona time. What is that? Mountain time and 11 PST.
Well, and at 10:30 PST technically for anyone who wants to jump in and have a pre-show chat with us.
Oh, this is the pre-show chat. It's like brunch. You get a brunch chat right before the show.
Exactly.
Serve up.
That's something we'll have to. I'll make a note here to send a note out via Patreon, so everybody is aware of the plans. So any patron supporters listening, but we'll also send an email. So now you'll doubly know.
And let's see. So saw Glass, and then I had been the only one in the house that had seen A Star Is Born, so shared that with two of the family members, and I don't think they enjoyed it as much as I did. And that may have been because there's something. Well, there's two things that happened. One, I saw it in the theater, and I think there's some of the live, the performances, the musical performances, or something about seeing those on a big screen. And the other thing that happened is my sound system. So I've got a TV, but I also have little in-home, sound bar and like surround speakers and all that. Well, my main sound bar died. So we were watching this, movie with great music and sound and through my TV speakers only. So it sort of diminished the, you weren't as immersed in those, performances. And I think that may have taken away a little bit from the overall impact of the movie.
Mm.
So I got to get that fixed.
It's interesting. That's one of those things like Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's like you probably want to see it on the big screen because those musical numbers they really shined for me when I was watching Star is Born on the big screen. It's just some fantastic concert moments.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's about it. Yeah, been busy working and other stuff, and we're packing up this week to send somebody back to college later today. So trip to the airport later today. So lots of family time.
Gotcha.
It's been there's things that are starting to trickle out into like Hulu and Netflix that I plan on digging into. So over the next few weeks, hope to have some stuff to talk about. So what about you? Other than Glass, you've just been
other than Glass,
living in the Marvel world, I assume.
Not a ton, but I've been playing catch up. You know me, I've got my many lists over on letterboxd.com that I'm actively trying to check off. I've got my Melissa McCarthy chronological viewing that I'm plowing through. I've hit quite a few of her films now. Actually, I have Ghostbusters is next on my list. I finished Central Intelligence this past week, which was the 23rd of the films that she's been in that I've watched. So I'm just pushing through that. I'm getting close to the end with that one. I'm trying to get the ones that I have very few films left. I'm trying to check those ones off the list because the other one that I'm working on very slowly is my Robert Redford series. The one that I'm working on for that one is A Bridge Too Far, which is one of those 3-hour war epics.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've seen it before, and for some reason, I'm just not looking forward to it. It might be great. I just don't remember very well, but it's just like this 3-hour war epic. And I started it the other night and fell asleep within 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, I got to do this not late at night. I got to give myself some time because that was not the way to kick that off.
You
but
can slow down on the Robert Redford. There's an end point on that one, right? It's not like
it's just a long ways away.
You've got what?
Because I mean, even
50 years to go.
That one.
What year was Bridge Too Far?
A Bridge Too Far was like 76, 77,
right,
somewhere around
there.
You've got
like 40 years of film to get through. That's not that bad.
Just a few. Well, and what's interesting, you look at the films that I've watched, and I'm 20 films in, and I'm only up to because All the President's Men was the one I watched just right before this one, and that was 76, and that was his 20th film. And so you think All the President's Men, number 20.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, it's a long list after that. So it's okay. I'm really enjoying his films. He's got some great stuff, and a lot of films that I'm looking forward to. Some that I've seen and some that I haven't. So that will be a fun one. And then in preparation, I guess you could say, because we're doing our Ingrid Bergman series later this year, 2 of the films on that the Patreon supporters ended up picking were films that she did with Hitchcock. And I have been doing a Hitchcock series as well, kind of watching all of his films, his sound films chronologically. And I'm also up to 20 there. I finished my 20th film this week, Lifeboat, which I've seen before, but it was nice to revisit just to get ready, because the next 2 on that list are the 2 Ingrid Bergman films. So now I guess I have to sit on that list until, I don't know, June or whenever we get around to that. But so that was kind of my week.
Well, speaking of Robert Redford, I tried watching Downhill Racer, because it's one that I just had not. I was at the library. It was the Criterion. It was like, Criterion, Robert Redford. Okay. I really struggled with that movie. And again, I was starting it late at night, but I don't know if it was the storytelling at that time in the early 70s, I just had so much trouble getting really invested in this. And I thought, from the description, I thought, okay, you've got this like ambitious, downhill skier, and you've got Gene Hackman, and it's like there's this young guy, and he's trying to make his way onto the American team. And I thought, this is like everything from the description, everything I think would be this great, really interesting sort of sports story. I just could not get into that movie at all. Really struggled.
It fits very much with the types of character films that he was doing in the late 60s. He's not that likable character. Right. He's a very headstrong, determined guy. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
But I actually ended up liking that one. I did finish that one. I ended up giving it 4 stars.
Okay.
So yeah, but it definitely was not a film that I was expecting it to be. And I don't know if that's just because in my head, I always picture sports movies are going to be much more of that celebratory, emotional sports journey that you have with them as they're succeeding. It was not that. It was very just, this is this character. He's not a great guy, but he's really determined to be the best. And it was interesting. Right. It's worth trying to check it, to finish it up if you want to. If you give yourself the time.
Well, it was one that I had pulled as I'm building my list for Three of a Kind. And so I'm looking at, characters that are like very ambitious, sort of prideful characters. And so I thought, okay, from some of the descriptions, I thought, okay, this is a guy who's going to do whatever it takes. And I didn't necessarily expect him to be likable, but just a very driven character. So I may have to come back to that one because I think part of it was setting aside the mindset of, it's a guy that's really driven, but I think I was expecting somebody a little bit more likable or relatable or something like that, of like, he's the outsider and he's trying to fight his way in, but you're going to be rooting for this guy. But he's not it's hard to root for a guy that's not likable. So I may have to come back around to that one. Okay. Yeah.
Should we talk Marvel news real quick?
Definitely talk the Marvel news. Because
I don't know if
it's a lot of Marvel news.
It's going to be hard to talk about with you.
Because it's a trailer? Are we talking trailers?
Because it's a trailer.
I've given up on Marvel trailers. I will watch them because there's not a whole lot of spoilers. I know what I'm going to get. So if we're talking, are we talking Spider-Man?
Spider-Man Far From Home. They call it the teaser. Yeah. I always laugh when it's basically a full trailer nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Yet they still call it a teaser. It's just an opportunity to really just release more trailers is really what it's become. It's so funny. But I mean, it's a full 2 minutes, 46 seconds. So of course it's a trailer.
I guess that's the thing I've sort of conceded on some things, as I'll watch like the first trailer, like for this, it's like, okay, now I know what the film is about. I know there's gonna be like 6 more trailers that come after this. So I'm like, I don't need, now you're just giving me more stuff. Give me the one trailer. That's all I need. It gave me everything I need to know about this movie. And okay, now I know there's going to be like more there's going to be like 2 or 3 more trailers. Then there's going to be like the TV spots that are like 30 to 40 seconds long, and all that stuff's going to be on. I'm not even going to bother with any of that. So I guess I'll say I'll watch the first one to get a general sense and get excited.
Well, and to that end, I mean, I do agree with you. I don't think they need to release as many trailers as they do. And nor do I think that they necessarily need to release them as early as they are. I think that Sony probably could have waited until Endgame was out to release this. I don't think 2 months, it used to be plenty of time to get a buzz for a movie. I don't know if they've done measurements in some capacity of, if we do a trailer 6 months ahead or 1 year ahead or 2 months ahead, what gives us the best box office return? It's, it just is like I don't know. It seems silly because how are you ever going to determine that? And why do they think that it's better this way?
There's money at stake. There's lots of research behind it. I'm sure there's everything about, building, awareness out there, just getting it out there so people, it's on their radar, and the longer tail you have in front of that. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. I think it has led to, as I've seen in Discord, interesting conversations about where this falls in the timeline and all kinds of speculation, because that's the really interesting thing with Marvel is, although we're in the cinematic universe, we're getting movies that are different points in the timeline, because we've got we don't know when this Spider-Man movie happens, because we can move around, because we're jumping back into the 90s, right, with Captain Marvel,
right.
Yeah, so this could be again prior to the Infinity War. We don't know. So and that's the great thing about comic books as well, is you can read one storyline or arc of in one series, and then there's crossovers, but you can always have that potential to be anywhere in another character's timeline. So
well, and this particular this is particularly interesting because Spider-Man is licensed by a different studio, and so Sony kind of can play by their own rules, even though they are working obviously to still now fit it into the MCU. And so I think that's a very interesting dilemma that Marvel ends up in, the fact that we'll let you play with some of our characters, we get to play with some of your characters, but obviously you still get to make these films on your own accord. Just try to play nice and try to make it fit with what we're doing. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy the speculation, and honestly it is one of those things where it's like, well, I don't want to get too spoilery just in this, but that Endgame, certain characters are obviously going to be alive because they, that there are other movie deals out there.
Yes.
Spider-Man, Black Panther, Doctor Strange. But you also are like, well, are they going to bring everybody back? Like who isn't going to make it out of Endgame? And if this trailer takes place after Endgame, it does give you an idea as to certain numbers of characters that are going to be alive later. So, but again, it's Sony. They get to play in their own universe, and I'm sure they probably got to do some dictating to Marvel as far as Endgame goes, and saying these people will definitely not be dead.
Yes.
Because we want them. We have licenses and we're going to use them.
Can't kill off our properties. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, it looks exciting. I love the suits, the different suits that he's wearing. I'm excited. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and can't wait to talk about this on the Marvel Movie Minute in
2050.
21 years.
Yeah.
What I do like about this, I was actually thinking about the context of covering the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're covering Iron Man 10 years after it was released. Yes. By the time we're covering Infinity War, it'll be 20 years after it's released. It's going to give us a great perspective on the films. Yes. Like, it's not like covering it the year after it's released and everybody, it's fresh in their minds and people have a good idea as to what we're going to talk about and everything. This gives us some time and perspective, and so I actually kind of like the fact that it's going to be delayed.
Oh yeah, you get a different perspective on just within the universe, actors. I mean, there's a lot of different things you'll have to discuss from a different point of view than we do right now, being less than a year out from the movie and being so sort of like tunnel vision on it. You'll be able to look at it in the broader perspective of what came before it and as a pivot point, where things went after. I mean, I think, when Iron Man was, just another superhero movie, and those had a certain reputation, and things changed with that movie. But no one would have known that even a couple of years after what foundation was being set with that movie. So. Yeah. Yeah.
And in 20 years, it'll be interesting to look back and talk about like Black Panther and see how that shifted things in this industry, or Captain Marvel. And so it's exciting. I think that it will allow for some nice perspective. Do you have any other Marvel news, or shall we get into trailers?
Go ahead. You hopeless romantic, you.
So my trailer this week is Berlin, I Love You, which I've never been to Berlin, so I can't actually say. But I love that filmmakers from around the world have been doing these. And actually, now that this is the fourth in this, I guess you could call it I guess they call it the Cities of Love franchise. I would love to do this as a series. I think it would be really interesting to just look at these and see different people's perspectives on different cities around the world and what those cities mean to them. First was Paris, Je t'aime, then New York, I love you, and then Rio, El te amo, and now we have Berlin, I love you, which oddly is not in German.
Yes.
Which, whereas the rest of them are. So I don't fully understand that. I'm guessing it would be. I'm trying to look and see on. No, even in the also known as, it only has the English title and a Greek title. So I have no idea. Anyway, I have not seen any of these movies, but I've always been curious about them because they get a bunch of directors on board and just they each tell their own little story. And this looks like just a lot of stories blended together with a lot of great actors in it. Keira Knightley, Helen Mirren, Luke Wilson, Jim Sturgis, Mickey Rourke, Hayden Panettiere. Who else is in? Diego Luna. I thought I saw that Orlando Bloom is in it, but I don't see his name on the list here as I scroll through it. Just it's a ton of people in a bunch of different stories about life in Berlin, and it's one of those anthology. I guess it's an anthology film with a bunch of different stories blending together, much like what P.T. Anderson did with Magnolia, or all these like Love Actually types of films. And I actually don't know if they blend the stories together like those, or if it's like, this is this director's story, this is this director's story, this is this director's story. Like, I'm not exactly sure how it all unfolds. But in the trailer, it's just this amalgam of all these people and their lives. And it's exciting to me. It's directed by, this is the list of directors: Diana Agron, Peter Chelsom, Fernando Imke, Justin Franklin, Dennis Gansel, Danny Levy, Daniel Lewowski, Joseph Rusnak, Till Schweiger, Massi Tajuddin, and Gabriela Chernik. So I'm not familiar with any of those directors, but I'm thrilled that it's one of these films that just has a nice list of directors to tell a variety of stories. What do you think?
This it's not my thing. I haven't seen any of these. I love short stories. Reading them, I think there is a challenge in finding a way to translate that to the screen, especially when you've got many stories and trying to anticipate audience expectation of, is there going to be cross connections and intersections of these stories, and how much, or is it just several stories? And then if we're cutting between them, are we losing momentum? And there's just nothing that I'm seeing in this trailer about any of these stories that are compelling me to see them. I think it's an interesting idea. I love that it gives multiple filmmakers these opportunities, and I love that this exists. It's not for me. It's nothing that I've just really been drawn to. I see that the next one they're prepping, Shanghai is the next city, I guess.
Nice.
If you go to the city, what is it? The citiesoflove.com website, and they talk about just this whole idea. And I love the concept of what they're doing. But yeah, it's just not a movie for me. And I love little like anthology films like this. There's been others I can think of what Jim Jarmusch did, Night on Earth, which was like taxi drivers.
Mm-hmm.
There's great opportunities for really interesting short films sort of embedded in there. It's always a mixed bag for me. There'll be one or two that Quentin Tarantino and who are the other filmmakers? Four Rooms. It's like you get There's none of those that I've ever felt have been, as a whole, this is like, wow, a really great, solid movie I'm going to enjoy watching over and over. It's always like, well, yeah, I enjoyed that segment. The rest, these other pieces, yeah, that was okay. I didn't care for this. And so I've never felt compelled to spend my time on these films, because I know I'm going to come out usually mostly disappointed, maybe finding one small gem. And so it's just not my thing.
Well, what I think is interesting, and just reading more about it on their website, I think speaks a lot to what they're trying to do. This is just their blurb. It says, Cities of Love is a franchise of collective motion pictures which started with Paris Je t'aime and New York I Love You. It is today a global initiative whose mission is to build the communities of the people who love their city. Our model allows the development of fertile media ecosystems in cities around the world. It opens a new path for content producers and empowers them to create an unlimited variety of content away from the norms of the traditional film and media industries.
Yes.
And if you read more about it, it's like, so it started 15 years ago, and the idea was illustrating the universality of love in major cities around the world. And they did that with the first three. And then they said their experience in Rio changed their model by opening new perspectives for social impact. And so they're now trying to find ways to do that where it can allow for more of a social impact. And I think that's really, really exciting. And I love that they're doing this. And I mean, you look at the map, and I didn't know there were so many cities of love around the world, but I guess if you love your city, it's a city of love is the way that they look at it. But we've got New York, Rio, on North and South America, and then everything else is over in Europe and Asia. And I'm curious to see how it expands, because I mean, man, there are a ton of little dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 cities of love. So I wonder if this will grow into a 21 film anthology, or if it'll just keep growing, or if it'll die.
No, I love the concept behind it, and maybe this is one that I'll give a shot. But I guess because, as I said, the stories they just aren't tackling things that seem of interest to me. And I guess maybe if I approach each like a mini film festival, I'm going to see a bunch of little short films, and I'll enjoy some and not the others. And I love the idea that it is giving filmmakers the opportunity to operate outside of the larger system, and anything that's supporting artists in that way, I fully support. Just this is not perhaps the subject matter that is going to most appeal to me, is all I can say. But yeah.
Well, we do also have to say Paris Je t'aime on the IMDb 6-star rule got a 7.3. Okay. New York I Love You 6.3. Right. Rio I Love You 5.2. So it's maybe slipping. So I guess we'll see. We'll see where Berlin lands. But interestingly, we'll have to wait until we get more release information, because right now, the only information we have about its release is that it's being released in Greece March 21st, 2019. We don't have any release dates yet for the rest of the world.
And, I will admit, I do have I'm probably lumping these in with the films that like Gary Marshall was doing, like those holiday films.
Oh, yeah.
And and see, I think I just, I'm lumping these in with that, which is not fair to them at all. But I think that's sort of, I've created this little subset of films in my head of these little Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, Mother's Day type things. And this is like, because the title is like, New York, I Love You. I'm like, oh, it's going to be really schmaltzy, cheesy love stories in New York. So I need to separate that. I will make a concerted effort to not lump them together and consider checking these other things out. Okay.
Well, if I watch them, I will let you know.
When is this hitting theaters?
Like I said, it's only right now listed for Greece.
So, okay.
So what's your trailer?
My trailer is a interesting story about a pair of high-frequency traders that go up against their old boss in an effort to make millions in a fiber optic cable deal. This is the Hummingbird Project, and this is about... it goes back to, oh gosh, what is it? The Sting, where it's like you've got the information, you're going to intercept the information before it gets to its destination. But now we're dealing with like stock trading and fiber optics and like milliseconds. And so they're building some fiber optic line from here to New York that's going to allow them to get that trade information like 1 millisecond faster. And apparently that's going to allow them to make like $500 million. But then, of course, their old boss, and we've got scheming and corporate espionage and everything going on. And we've got Jesse Eisenberg and Alexander Skarsgård and Salma Hayek all in, to me, what looks like a perfect little smallish film taking on big ideas. it's something that, again, I'm seeding, these shows with trailer rewind possibilities. This is one I don't know that is going to get a lot of attention, despite the cast. I hope it does, but this is just, to me, an interesting concept to see when people have large plans. There's always going to be some failure in how they respond, and is their ambition for greed going to be rewarded in the end? Are they going to learn a lesson? What is the ultimate, moral tale that this filmmaker is trying to tell? And this is from writer-director Kim Nguyen, I do not know. I said, I don't know anything. This is not a name that I'm familiar, but digging in, some interesting films that he has done. Eye on Juliet, Two Lovers and a Bear, and War Witch. Haven't seen any of them, but reading their descriptions, very unique and interesting stories. So this one is a little bit more conventional. Two Lovers and a Bear is a little bit more like a fairy tale. So I'm intrigued to see what he brings together with this cast, and to me, a really interesting story. And this is going to be hitting theaters March 15th, right there around spring break time. So
it looks. I had seen the name of the film, but I didn't know anything. Oh well, I think I read just the basic synopsis. I'm like, okay, that could be interesting. Jesse Eisenberg, he can be in some interesting stuff, and but I kind of passed it, and then you picked it for your trailer, and I'm like, oh, okay, this actually might be interesting. I love the idea of these guys buying 12 inches of a swath of 12 inches across people's farms underneath just to lay this pipe and whatever they're doing. I thought it was just a really interesting setup, and I don't know, it just kind of intrigued me. It's like a different type of heist movie. So I thought it looked pretty interesting. It also has a Michael Mando in it, who plays, I guess, one of their partners. And just a side note about him, he's an actor who I haven't seen in a lot of stuff, but I know he's been doing tons of TV and in a few films. And the Marvel tie-in here is that he was in Spider-Man Homecoming as Mac Gargan, who, of course, becomes the Scorpion. And at the very end of that film, you see him, he's got like a brace on his arm and meets Toombs in prison. And I guess at this point, may be becoming the Scorpion in that film. So
okay.
Who knows? Yeah.
All right.
And of course, we just got a different portrayal of the Scorpion in Spider-Verse, which was nice to see.
It's always coming back to Marvel for you, isn't it?
It is now, man. I tell you.
That world.
So when does this one open?
This one is hitting March 15th. So, like I said, right around springtime there, a little sort of alternate programming for you. Like I said, this looks like a smaller film. Recognizable cast that I hope draws in an audience. So we will see what happens come spring, if this one has legs and makes it through the spring, or if this is going to be one that we'll be seeing showing up on streaming services later in the summer. Who knows?
It's a tricky one because, the IMDb star rating is 7.2. Clear, and it opened at TIFF last year.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that's gotten good feedback. But is it a big enough film to garner any sort of a wide release, or is it going to be just a very limited release, or is it going to end up just getting that straight to video shelving?
We shall see.
Who knows?
All right, sir.
All right. Well, shall we kick into
your favorite list of all time?
Right.
Which one are you regretting more? Is this worse for you, or is it Lusty Teen Romances that was going to be?
Lusty Teen Romance would have been my worst one to have to do. Okay. As I said on the show, Shakespeare is not my favorite thing to watch. I always feel like I'm suffering through it, even the good ones, just because I really have to pay attention. Like, it's just, the language just is very tiring mentally for me to watch Shakespeare films. But that doesn't mean that I haven't enjoyed some of them in the past. I think there are some really good adaptations of his work, and I guess that's what we're going to talk about here. So, because that's what the people picked. They demanded it.
They did. By an overwhelming majority this time. It wasn't really that close this time. So,
when it was tied, I had to throw my vote in because I'm like, there's no way this is going to lusty teen romance. No way.
I stepped aside and said, I will let the people speak. I'm not going to manipulate this one. So, because I was happy with any of these. So, yeah.
Well, there's some there were good options. As much as I did want to put something like Shakespearean Love on my list, I didn't because I'm like, I don't think that's fair. Even though I'd much rather watch that.
So did you go with more strict, true Shakespearean, like we're bringing this? Or did you go with these are adaptations? We've modernized it. Or so you stuck with
Lion King is not on my list. I wanted it to be,
so you
but
said
I'm
going hardcore movies that are going to bore me to death because the language is so impenetrable.
That's not exactly the words that came out of my mouth.
But that's what you're describing. I see. Okay.
That's it. Yes. Yes, indeed. But so do you want me to go first?
Let's see where you start off.
And to be honest, I mean, there have been a good number of adaptations of Shakespeare's works in the last decade. I mean, I can probably name a handful, but I don't think I've seen, I'm trying to think of the last adaptation of a Shakespeare film that I've seen. I don't know what it was. I feel like maybe it was in the early 2000s, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to have to now go into Kenneth Branagh's because I guarantee it was probably something that he did.
He does one every couple of years, it seems. Yes.
He seems to be the only one that I actually willingly, put myself through as far as watching his Shakespeare adaptations. But even him, as I'm looking at it, I don't think I've seen any of his since the 90s. So I haven't watched a Shakespeare film in quite a while. But so the first one on my list, and I'm torn because there's two routes that I can go with this. But I'm gonna have to save one just in case we have a steal. I'm gonna go with a really really fun adaptation. It's a straight adaptation of Richard III, and it's called Richard III, but it takes place in 1930s Britain, and Ian McKellen is in it, and it's this film that's set in the war era, and it was actually a really exciting period to put this story. And when he's like, my kingdom for a horse, and he's looking for a tank, as memory serves, I just thought it was really fun. I mean, it was a great adaptation, seeing him as kind of this hunchback general. I don't know. That was one that I found myself really, I just enjoyed it. So that's my first, Richard III. Did you see that one? I
have not seen that one. That's one that's on my list of things to see. And I remember when it came out hearing really good things about it, but I just was, just never got around to that one.
And my connection to Marvel with that is that Robert Downey Jr.'s in it. So
what, Ian McKellen? Oh no, Ian McKellen. That's Marvel still, isn't it? But it's not in the MCU,
but yes,
he's Fox's version. Okay.
And then we have Annette Bening, who is in Captain Marvel.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. All right. Well, pretty much everybody. So you can't throw a stone in Hollywood without hitting somebody that's in Marvel now.
It's like the Brits getting into the Harry Potter films. That's what it's become now.
Okay. Well, I've got two lists. I've got my strict Shakespeare, if we want to go there. But I did come up with my people that don't love Shakespeare. Here's an entry point into Shakespeare. And here's some adaptations that you may want to consider. And there's a lot of really good ones out there, but I'm going to dig deep into some of these that people may not have seen in a long time or heard of. And I'm just going to use this as watch this, and then you're going to get familiar with the story, and that can help you navigate your way through. So I am going to start off with going way, way back, and for an truly unconventional, I think unexpected adaptation, going into the sci-fi realm with Forbidden Planet. If you have not seen Forbidden Planet, I think people are familiar with the iconography of the robot and all of that, but basically Forbidden Planet, 1956, and I think people know this was one of those, Leslie Nielsen that everybody grew up in the 80s watching, in airplane movies and being a comedian, playing something a little bit more straight, a little more serious here. But this is a adaptation of Shakespeare's The Tempest, where you have people crash landing on a place and there's in this case, a robot, but in The Tempest, it's a monster, and you've got all kinds of things going on. To me, it's a good entry point for a nice film that I think people haven't seen in a long time. I know I haven't seen it in a long time, but to give you the key points of a Shakespeare story in an enjoyable way that you can then transition over into the more complex Tempest. There are other adaptations of The Tempest, but for me, this is probably the most easily accessible for people wanting an entry point into Shakespeare.
That's bananas, because I've seen this film several times and I really enjoy it, and I had no idea because I've never read The Tempest. I've never seen any versions of it, which is funny. I mean, I don't think that they say it's based on,
and a lot of times
I think it's one of those things that probably it's like similar.
Well, it's like,
to,
I don't think there's
thing,
anything
right?
in Apocalypse Now that says that it's adapted from Heart of Darkness. If you look at the credits or screenwriting, I don't think there's anything that makes that connection. But it's adapting key story elements. Same thing with Forbidden Planet.
Sure.
If you look on IMDb writing credits, they say William Shakespeare play uncredited. So I think people have realized that. And again, when stuff's in public domain, I don't know that you need to give as much credit as.
Yeah.
So now you know. And so if you watch Forbidden Planet, then you start to get into The Tempest, you'll start to see some of these similarities in story. All right.
Nice. The next one on my list is I'm going big and I'm going long. I am looking at Kenneth Branagh and checking out his version of Hamlet that he did in '96. There are other versions of this, and I've seen actually probably more versions of this than any other of the films. I just think that Branagh did some amazing stuff with it and made an incredibly beautiful film. I mean, it is just a stunning film to look at, shot in 70 millimeter. And it's this magical world. There's nothing depressing about the world that you find in some of the other versions. It's just a kind of, I think it's really kind of his high point of the stuff that he did with his Shakespeare works. It's just, I mean, it's lush, it's just rich and overflowing, which makes for a really great contrast to this dark story that they're telling. And, he called it the first unabridged theatrical film version of Hamlet, running just over 4 hours. It is a lengthy beast. This is one that I did go see with friends in the theater on 70 millimeter because we had the opportunity and we weren't going to pass it up. It was, and I think that it was until Paul Thomas Anderson made The Master, it was the last film that was shot entirely on 70 millimeter, which is an interesting footnote considering it's 4 hours long. That's a lot of expensive footage to be shooting with this thing. But and I know that it's unabridged, but I know he kind of in the editing kind of moves some things around and stuff. But for me, even though it's a dense story, Hamlet's one that I've always still enjoyed. Just the complexities and the mental games and everything. I think it's just a really interesting story, and I just thought he did a great job. So that's my number 2.
No, that is if I'm gonna pick my Branagh Shakespeare, that's definitely at the top of my list because that is everything just done so well. That's one that I think for a while it may have been, I don't know if it was available on DVD or if there was a condensed version, but I know this is one, if you can find that full 4-hour version and you lock down part of an afternoon to just put yourself through it, it's really enjoyable because it does have all the pieces. It has the main key parts of Hamlet, but he's kept all of the political side of that, which often gets cut out. And to me, it's really important stuff because it is a large, complex story. So I'm glad you mentioned that one. It is one of my favorites. It's not one I watch a lot, but it is definitely high quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do see that it has been released on Blu-ray.
Okay.
You can pick it up in the 242-hour
242
version.
hours?
That being said, sorry, 242.
That's what it may feel like for you. Yes.
That's right. 242 minutes. Woo! But I do see that on Amazon, the I don't know if it was a limited release or what, because it's or probably they just didn't make a ton of copies, but they have it right now as the list price of $89.
Whoa.
So
okay.
Little steep to pick that one up. So maybe see if your library might have it or something like that.
It may be available out on streaming somewhere. Who knows? No,
it's not on. It's not streaming on Amazon Prime.
Okay. No.
Yeah, and actually, they do sell. Now that I look at it, they do have the DVD versions that you can still pick up over on Amazon for like $17.
Yeah, it's like buying VHS nowadays.
Yeah,
because we're past Blu-ray. We're into 4K now.
It's It's not a movie that you want to pick up and watch on DVD. I mean, it's so lush. Yeah. You really want that. I mean, this is one that they should re-release in UHD 4K or whatever, and just make this, because the image deserves it.
Well, I see it is available for purchase digitally. Looks like YouTube, Google, Vudu, iTunes, Apple iTunes. Okay. So for $12.99. So you can get.
So if you get it there, eventually, maybe one day they'll have a really fancy upgrade that you'll automatically get.
Exactly. All right. Oh, excellent pick. So I'm going to move up from the 50s into the 90s. And I think this may have been, I'm going to say yes. This was the first Gus Van Sant film I saw in theaters because I discovered him as an interesting director on Drugstore Cowboy. So when he came out with this quirky little film called My Own Private Idaho with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix, I was intrigued. And then as I learned that it was based on Shakespeare's Henry IV, I was really intrigued. And this was one of these movies that went to the theater to see and walked out saying, what just happened to me? What did I just see? Because not only is it a modernization of the story of Henry IV, which the play Henry IV, which is really part 2, leads into Henry V. So we're looking at young Henry V before he becomes king and how he has rejected sort of the throne and everything that comes with that and is out amongst the common folk. And in Gus Van Sant's version, that's Keanu Reeves out amongst sort of the street hustlers and male prostitutes up in the Pacific Northwest. And we've got all kinds of interesting visuals going on, and it just really blew me away as a powerful film. But again, taking Shakespeare and finding sort of those common human truths and elements that make those plays endure and bringing it into a completely new and unexpected environment.
It's a really interesting film. I haven't returned to it since I saw it back in theaters when it was released. But it is a film that's had scenes that have stuck with me. I find it to be an intriguing one. And it's funny, just like your last pick, I didn't know it was an adaptation of Shakespeare's works until much later in life. It's like,
see,
so, funny how Shakespeare sneaks into things without me realizing
everywhere. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. As I go through my list, I realize, I don't really dislike Shakespeare. Like all of these films, I actually really like. And so I think that's but it is hard. Like I don't willingly just sit down and put the 4-hour Hamlet.
Oh yes, no one does.
No, but this final pick of mine, I would say, is absolutely my favorite Shakespeare film. I really love it. I think there's magic with it. There's this just lush romance. It's funny. Weirdly, it's one that I don't find the Shakespearean language struggle. Like I don't find it that I struggle with it. I just have so much fun. And again, going back to Kenneth Branagh, who I could have really just done an entire list of just his films because he makes great Shakespeare. What can I say? I am looking at his 1993 film that he did, Much Ado About Nothing. I thought it was a perfect pairing of him and Emma Thompson, who he was married to at the time. I loved the two of them on screen together. They had great chemistry. It's got Robert Sean Leonard and Kate Beckinsale. It's got Denzel Washington, Michael Keaton, Keanu Reeves. I just had so much fun with this. It was a beautiful film. It was shot in Tuscany. And again, I think that Branagh just found the way to tap into this world and just make it great. Plus, it's got a really fantastic soundtrack that Patrick Doyle did with the Sigh No More, Ladies Sigh No More song at the kind of center of it. I love it. This is one that I really do love.
No, I think if someone is not familiar with Shakespeare but they want to experience true Shakespeare, not an adaptation, this is the film to sit them down with, because, oh my gosh, there's so many scenes that I can just say, this is a great, this brings out the comedy that people forget is in Shakespeare so much. And Kenneth Branagh brings it all to life. And when you think about how to take those words and bring them to life, this movie does it better than any other, because you don't realize you're watching Shakespeare, because these characters, he's found the right cast to understand the language, and as they're speaking these lines, you get the emotion that's behind it. You get the meaning behind it. You also have Michael Keaton in there as well as Dogberry. Yeah, now this is a classic. This is, yes. Basically, if I had done my strict Shakespeare, you've pretty much hit that right here with the Branagh. These two, yes, definitely. All right.
What's your number one?
What movie types are in my wheelhouse?
I know exactly what your number one is. Do you want me to guess?
Okay, go ahead.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Of course. Yes. Yes. Because
I knew that one was Shakespeare.
You know that one was Shakespeare. Yes, that's good. I tried to hit all genres here, and most people should know that this is The Taming of the Shrew. And this is the one of all the different, there have been so many attempts to adapt Shakespeare and modernize it and set it in high schools. And the other one that gets an honorable mention is Tim Blake Nelson's O, which is an adaptation of Othello. But 10 Things I Hate About You, so much fun to watch. Oh my gosh, watching this makes me feel so old, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks like he's 12 years old in this movie. Of course, Julia Stiles and, the late Heath Ledger. This movie is so much fun. You can sneak it in with your kids and they won't know they're watching Shakespeare. This is captures to me the epitome of everything that was going on in the 90s, with making good movies for teens, treating them intelligently. Actually, or in the 2000s. I don't think we were in the 90s at this point. I feel like I'm in the 90s when it comes to these things. But yes, this is top of my list. If you want to go to Shakespeare, this is it.
That is one.
Yeah,
I had a great time with that film. And I've seen Taming of the Shrew on stage. I've never seen any other screen versions other than this one. And weirdly, I love keeping it that way, because I think that they did such a great job of bringing this into a world that made so much sense for this story. I just loved it.
Oh, yeah. 1999. So it was right there on the cusp. And, looking at the cast, I forgot David Krumholtz and Allison Janney. And, you're going to recognize so many faces in this. For me, it's a bit of nostalgia. I think for kids, it'll be a nice little retro look at the 90s. But yeah, that's where we go with Shakespeare.
And then, interesting, you mentioned, that one came out in 2001, just a couple years later.
Yes. Oh, yeah, there was
that one was supposed to be 99, but that got shelved for a couple of years because of Columbine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
It's dark, yeah. Lots of good films here. Lots of good films.
See, Shakespeare doesn't need to be scary. Shakespeare is very friendly.
I did have other good adaptations on my list as options. I had Mel Gibson's Dark Hamlet.
Yes.
Also Zeffirelli. I had Henry V, good old Henry V, that Branagh did. I really love his. I appreciate Olivier's version of that one, but Branagh's I just really love. Also, an amazing score by Patrick Doyle. And then jumping all the way back to some Orson Welles films, his Macbeth and his Othello, I really like. So
you look up Shakespeare adaptations. There's so many, and not just in the English language. There's so many different adaptations globally of those stories. Kurosawa. You got to look at Throne of Blood, which is Macbeth, and Ron, which is King Lear. The stories are universal, and there's so many great films. You may not know you're watching a Shakespeare film, and there are some failings. There was an attempt to remake Macbeth as sort of a 90s, I don't know what it was called, Scotland, Pennsylvania, and it was sort of set, it tried to do a different take on it. The Three Witches were sort of like three hippie stoners, and Andy Dick was one of them. It did not work out too well. So there's lots to choose from out there. That could be, you could spend 2 years just doing Shakespeare adaptation series.
You really could.
Yes.
I mean, you could do just looking at the stuff that Kenneth Branagh has done. I mean, you could, there's plenty in there. Love's Labor's Lost, As You Like It, Twelfth Night. He's a big lover of the Bard, and although now it seems that he's shifting to the Agatha Christie mode because he's got Death on the Nile coming next year.
Yeah,
so which is fun. Cool. Well, that's our lists, everybody.
Okay.
So what are we going to do this week? We are kicking off our Rocky series.
Rocky. We got to come up
some pugilism.
Let's see. Movies with people sloppily drinking eggs. That
will be a very short list.
Movies with people running up the streets.
I feel like we have to do training montages as an option.
Okay. But now, see, here's the thing is, it's been a long time since I've seen Rocky. Are there a lot of training montages in the first one? I know we get there in subsequent ones. I just didn't recall, was there a lot of training montage in the first one? I know there's the running and then the punching the beef stuff, but
right. Yeah. He's got that training montage right there.
Okay.
It's not, I haven't seen, now I've seen the first two, but I haven't seen anything else. So I can't speak to according to Pete, we're going to have quite a load of training montages coming up in 3 and 4. So
okay.
So maybe we should save that, but we might as well put it out here now and let people pick something else.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. We got training montages. We've got, we could do sport. This might be tricky. I don't know. Sports films where the character or team you're following loses in the end. Is that a tricky thing to track down?
There's not we can put it on the list, and there could be some challenges. So where it's not where victory in sports isn't sort of the ultimate resolution of the story.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not always about winning. Sometimes there's another lesson to be learned.
We'll call it it's not always about winning list.
It's not always about winning list. Yeah. I think we can find some of those.
That would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
And let's see, what else? We could just go broad and just say boxing movies, and that can be our safety net that we can keep throwing out every week for the next 8 weeks. It's like as Nick Langdon pointed out, it's like you never ended up doing a Talking Animals series on the Planet of the Apes franchise. So.
That's true, because we've already done actors. Oh no, we did actors directing. Have we done actors writing? Writing and actors? Because
we haven't.
Stallone wrote this one, right? So
yeah. Well, he didn't later on this one. He will be directing. But
later on, but we already did an actors directing.
Should we do actors writing?
I think you should throw it out there. We'll see.
Okay.
See what's out there.
All right. Maybe training very short list. It's not always about winning, and actors writing.
Yeah.
I think it sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's going to be the list. We'll get it up on the Show Talk channel, so get your votes in, everybody, and we'll be back here next week talking about it. But until then, Steve, it was a pleasure talking with you this fine Saturday morning.
See, you can say it here at the end. You said fine Saturday morning.
I did.
Just
and I didn't even feel like, I didn't even think about it until you said it.
No, so Pete, take that audio. That's our new intro to Saturday Matinee. Andy saying fine Saturday morning without an accent. That's how we start this show, and that's how we end this show.
Thanks to all of our supporters. We appreciate you. All of your support is very meaningful to us, and enjoy the show, and have a great day, everybody.
Hondo.